Gracias. Hola.
So you're the demand.
Hello. Okay, I have to ask, how many of you were here 10 years ago when I was a guest here for the very first time? Yes. Oh, and she brought a picture. Vivian, right? See, my mind is not gone yet. Yes, I've been wanting to come back and visit you for a very long time, and I'm so happy to be with you here. Thank you for coming, too, by the way. Thank you. It's going to be a great weekend, I'm sure of it.
Yes, it will.
And I was getting crazy there watching some of those videos. Like the Broly movie, of course, is just yell, yell, fight, fight, fight. I have to tell you something funny. As I was watching that, I was reminded when I was speaking to Funimation about the new movie, before I recorded it, before I had even seen it, I said to them, so, you know, how many times does he say Kakarot? And they said, you know what? He never says it. And I was like, really? Sweet, well then what's he gonna say? And they said, well, you'll be interested in knowing he has 25 speaking lines and 500 fight noises. So even now, he's a man of few words, but lots of action. So I am so happy to be here with you guys. I am not typically a sit behind a desk at the, on stage kind of a guy. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to come down there with you, okay? Is that all right? Good. See, this is more my stuff. And this camera's like, it's like, this camera's not going to work. He just ran off stage. Stupid Vic. You guys, first of all, let me just do real quick a little bit of kind of housekeeping. Just things I want to make sure and tell you. And if you haven't seen this girl's shirt, I've already sent it to 5 of my friends. It's a Rin Matsuoka shirt from the swimming anime. And it's really great. And her mom made it. How cool is that? For those of you that don't know, or maybe just got kind of dragged into the room, my name is Vic Mignogna. It's the easiest thing, especially here, it's like tomorrow in Spanish. Mañana. Every time somebody says, how do you say that name? I'm like, tomorrow in Spanish. Mañana? Yes! Perfect. I've been voice acting for almost 20 years. I've done over 300 different animated series and video games, and I also executive produce and am the main character in my lifelong passion project, Star Trek Continues. If you guys have any love at all, or kind of just an affection for the classic Star Trek from the late 60s, or if you don't but your dad does, or your mom, or your uncle, or your school teacher, tell them about Star Trek Continues. It picks up, it's a live-action web series, and I'm the exec producer, and I get to fulfill my childhood dream of playing Captain Kirk. And it starts right where the original Star Trek was canceled, and then it ends, it finishes. Okay, who can tell me what Captain Kirk said at the beginning of every show? Space, the final frontier, right? These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. It's 5-year mission. They were canceled in their 3rd season of television. They didn't finish the 5-year mission. And the next time you saw Captain Kirk or Mr. Spock or Dr. McCoy was 10 years later in Star Trek the Motion Picture in 1977. Excuse me, 79. They were canceled in 69. They came back with the movie in 79, but by then, Captain Kirk had become like an admiral at Starfleet. He wasn't even the captain of the Enterprise anymore. Spock had gone back to his home planet of Vulcan. Everybody had kind of gone their own separate ways. So my idea was, let's pick up right where the original series was canceled and finish the 5-year mission of the Enterprise, return it to Earth, and craft a beautiful story that explains why everyone was where they were when the motion picture picks them up. So we have 11 full-length episodes, hour-long, beautiful, beautiful episodes that are just like the original Star Trek in every way. It's as if it was never canceled. Most people say, oh my gosh, after 10 minutes, I felt like I was watching episodes that were locked in a vault for 50 years somewhere. And so check it out, StarTrekContinues.com. And here's the best part. It's free. Oh, turn that off. Who put that up there? Did you do that?
Sorry.
It's free to watch because it's my gift to Star Trek. My love for that show. Please check it out, okay? It's a lot of fun. All of it is great. And it leaves everybody right where the motion picture begins. So it's a really great filler between the series and the movies. Let's see, I also just finished an audiobook. I promised myself I would never do an audiobook. For years, all of my voice acting friends have told me, hey Vic, if anyone ever asks you to do an audiobook, don't. Because they're so time-consuming and tedious, and they just don't tend to pay a lot. So it's really not worth the huge amount of time investment. So I made a mental note, right, don't do audiobooks, got it, never gonna do one. So this publishing company contacts me and says, hey, we'd like you to do an audiobook. And I'm thinking, nope, I promised I wouldn't and I won't. And then they said the name of the book is These Are the Voyages, and it's about the original Star Trek series. Great. So you caught me at my weakest point. The only thing I would ever do an audiobook on is the original Star Trek series. Let me tell you guys something. It's the coolest thing too. Can I just take 1 minute and tell you? Everybody knows like what Star Trek is. I mean, even if you're not a fan, you know Star Trek. You know the uniforms, you know Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, and you've probably seen a lot of the episodes, this one or that one, about this thing or that thing. But this book is about the making of the show. It's fascinating to find out, to coin a phrase, it's fascinating to find out all of the challenges that they had in making this show. You don't even realize some of the things, a lot of the things, that they were fighting to try to get these shows that we all know, like iconic moments in television and images. I'm going to tell you one, for instance. I love this kind of stuff so much. Everybody on planet Earth knows what I mean when I say I'm beaming down, right? Beam me up. They're talking about the transporter from Star Trek, right? Beaming up and beaming down, right? It's part of the entire vernacular of the whole world. Everybody knows what beaming up and beaming down means, right? When they were creating Star Trek, I'm talking about Gene Roddenberry and Bob Justman and the people that were building this show when there was no show. And there was no such thing as a transporter or a communicator or phasers. Things that we think of now as part of our whole world culture. Everybody, anywhere you go, knows those things. When these men were creating the series, do you know how they came up with the idea for the transport? It's a pretty cool idea, isn't it? Beaming up and beaming down. And I don't know if you know this, but scientists are now like literally experimenting with turning physical objects into matter or into energy and moving them somewhere and reassembling them. Exactly like what the transporter did. Do you know how they came up with that idea? Gosh, I love this kind of stuff. Have you ever heard the term, necessity is the mother of invention? You heard that phrase? It basically means you need to figure out something and you invent something amazing purely because you had to come up with something. As they were starting to build this show and trying to decide how they were going to do it and what things were going to look like, they came across a big problem, and that was the budget. To shoot a show like this costs a lot of money, even in the late 60s. And the Enterprise, right, where everybody is on the ship, they realized that it would cost way too much money for the ship to land on a planet every week. It would cost too much money in special effects to try to shoot the ship landing on a new planet. It was financially impossible. They came up with the idea of the transporter so they could get down to the planet, back up and down from the ship without having to land the ship every week. Isn't that amazing? And now it's part of the planet Earth. I love that kind of stuff, you know? Phaser actually stands for something. Did you guys know that, like, flip phones? That's a communicator, y'all. You get that, right? 60 years ago, Gene Roddenberry went to research and development companies and said, what do you project for the future? What are some of the things you project we might have? Like a computer that sits on your desk. Do you guys realize that when they came up with that idea, computers fit in this room? There was no such thing as home computers or a laptop. But they had them on the Enterprise. Tricorder that does all kinds of things. And the sick bay, when you would lay down on the bed and the thing over their heads would go boom, boom, and it would read their vitals. They have that now. It's just, I mean, communicators. Cell phones are basically communicators. And even the first cell phones had a little flip. You lift the lid open. Yeah, and you know what it is? Yeah, oh my goodness. And a lot of the people that have even developed these things were Star Trek fans when they were kids. So then they go into science because of Mr. Spock, right? Or because of that show. And they actually figure out ways to develop these fantastic ideas that were commonplace in Star Trek. I love it. And so this book, These Are the Voyages, is literally about the making of the original series. Literally each chapter is about a different episode. And it talks about who wrote it, and the problems they had writing it, and the fights that they had about it, and the network, and the arguments with the network, and the guest stars being a pain in the butt, and somebody getting sick and having to do this, and falling behind schedule, and it cost too much money, and Lucille Ball saving the show. You guys, anybody know who, most of you, do you know who Lucy is? Lucille Ball, I Love Lucy, redhead, right? Did you know that she and her, I'm sorry, I know that you're like, this is supposed to be an anime Q&A. We're talking about Star Trek. Okay, let me just tell you this, Nimrod. I promise not to talk about Star Trek anymore unless somebody asks me a question. Lucille Ball and her husband, Desi Arnaz, at the time, bought a movie studio. There was an old movie studio called RKO Pictures, and they were going out of business. And Desi and Lucy decided they were going to start their own studio. And they bought it and they called it Desilu. And then they divorced. And they divorced and Lucy kept the studio. Can you see it in your mind? So now here's Lucille Ball, her husband and she have broken up, and she's got this movie studio, TV studio, and she wants to make good. So she says to her board of directors, go find me some really cool, out-of-the-box, never been done before TV show ideas. Because at the time, you guys, most television shows were two things. A Western or a cop show. Now, Lucy wanted to break the mold. She wanted to come up with something new. And her people brought her two shows. Mission Impossible and Star Trek. When they pitched Star Trek to her, you know what her board of directors told her? Lucy, don't make this show. It will bankrupt your studio. It's going to be way too expensive. It'll bankrupt your studio. Because think about it, guys. If we want to make a cop show, well, I mean, we wear normal clothes. And we drive around the city, right? We're in cop cars and guns. Things that already exist in everyday life. But Star Trek, not only is it a completely different setting, right? A futuristic setting where everything needs to be made, right? But think about it. Every week they go to a different planet. Or they meet a new alien. Or the alien, there's a new ship. Spaceship. All of those things had to be built. Every week they had new characters and makeup and special effects. Cop shows don't need special effects. Think about it. Westerns don't need special effects. They build a Western town, they shoot the TV show every week. But with Star Trek, phasers, the ship flying by, force fields, any number of hundreds of different effects. In fact, they fell behind, and you'll find this out in the audiobook if you listen to it. They fell behind in their schedule because the special effects company could not keep up. Because guess what? No one had ever done a laser beam before like that. No one had ever... What the heck does beaming up look like? Really, think about it. So if I tell you, okay, they're going to stand on this platform and then they're going to disappear. Well, what is it going to look like? Are you just going to pop away like Bewitched or something? Just gone? No, we want them to like fizzle away or sparkle away. Somebody had to create that idea. And they didn't have computers. There's an episode where this guy is shooting a lightning bolt out of his finger at the Enterprise. Do you know what the lightning bolt was? They scratched the film. I want you to think about this a minute. Today, you would do it on your computer, right? You would bring in the film that you shot of the guy standing there doing this, stop! And there's nothing there, just him standing there pointing his finger. And then you import that film, in that video, into your laptop, and then you just drag in a lightning bolt effect. And you line it up with his finger, and boom, you're done. There were no computers, there's nothing like that. So these poor special effects guys get this script that says, he shoots lightning bolt out of his finger, and they're like, oh crap. How do we even do that? How do you do it? What they did was they took the physical film and imagine taking like a needle and going and scratching the emulsion off of every frame so it looks like this bright white, flickering lightning bolt. Anyway, back to the Lucille Ball story. So they told her, don't make this show. It'll bankrupt your studio, and she did it anyway. And Star Trek was very popular, but it cost way too much. And they ended up canceling it because it was too expensive. And it did bankrupt Lucy's studio. That's the kind of behind-the-scenes, really fascinating stuff that you'll hear about in this book. So check it out. Also, a lot of you guys wrote me and asked me if I was going to be bringing my music CDs or my concert DVD with me. I have them down at the table downstairs, and I would love for you to have them. They're down there. I'd be happy to sign them. I have to tell you, the concert DVD is really a great... Does anybody here have my concert DVD? Yeah?